The initial symptoms of a mysterious infection are sore throat and cough. Immediately afterwards, the condition worsens rapidly and is characterized by dyspnea and persistent inflammatory reactions with intense pain in the airways and esophagus. There is no fever. In the case of humans, there are individual differences in medical conditions. But what they have in common is that inflammatory reactions are observed in all organs and tissues throughout the body. It was around the winter of 2019 that this characteristic symptom began to appear from Japan, not in China. Currently, most are asymptomatic after infection in Japan. It is unclear why the condition occurs. No one on this planet can explain those phenomena. In other words, 1 year is about to pass without knowing the source of infection. With the world's borders cut off, the number of affected individuals is increasing exponentially at the same time. In all countries on different continents, even though there are no organisms that carry infectious factors, it's a very mysterious phenomenon. But fortunately the child doesn't get seriously ill. So, at modern stage, leaving the possibility of leaving offspring for humankind. However, there is no constant distribution or regularity in the age of onset. However, there is an onset tendency for more people in their 20s than the elderly. It may be related to sexually transmitted, but it's really unknown. Anybody out'll be actually been unknown. With the start of emergency administration of planetary level vaccines for coronavirus, I think it will be clear next year that humanity has a decision of our future. At least, nowadays, humans have determined that the coronavirus is the pathogen. I don't know what the true pathogen is, but I think it's completely different. Ordinary workers in this world tend not to go to the hospital, even if they get sick. Originally, it is a level that requires appropriate treatment at the hospital. I think that many people are in a situation that a widespread infectious disease requires intravenous administration of antibiotics and various treatments in hospitals. Delays in proper treatment may lead to severe illness or delayed spontaneous healing. In the worst case, they will die. The reason why many workers do not go to the hospital is that they cannot take time off from work. In addition, the global has become even more depressed, and most people cannot re-employ. If the worker in the company will hospitalize and rests, there are typical patterns in which the employee is dismissed after waiting at home for a month. Due to the worldwide occurrence of unexplained inflammatory reactions and the harmful effects of multiple infectious agents such as viruses in the environment, humans exercise, change their diet, and what kind of health. It turned out that there was no point in trying to maintain any health. Therefore, right now, or in the near future, there is no point in eating or drinking health foods. The concept of maintaining good health has still collapsed, and no one would use health foods. In the future, the inflammatory reaction will accelerate in the body, and fatal diseases such as carcinogenesis, ruptured aneurysm, and arteriosclerosis will occur frequently. But no one will care these illnesses. To put it simply, many workers become less conscious of health examinations and healthy foods. Maybe they will leave their adult diseases unattended and want to die early without treatment. In other words, it is the beginning of a short-lived society for humankind on Earth. It is expected that the number of cancer patients and arteriosclerosis patients will increase in the future. The scenario is that not only the elderly, but also working adults will die at an early stage in their life cycle. Then, an inflammatory reaction begin to occur in the young child. Maybe, the cause of each is unknown by modern science and human being. In fact, more and more ordinary workers are choosing to die if they are hospitalized or have a PCR test. In Japan, many people commit suicide before the PCR testing for symptoms. In other words, ordinary people have no choice but to give up and die without any treatment at the hospital. At the 2021 Tokyo Olympics, the Prime Minister in Japan had publicly stated that he wanted to commemorate the overcoming of the virus by human beings due to the large intake of vaccines. But as a matter of fact, next year, the opposite is true. Anyway, it is thought that it has become opposite situation. It is the beginning of an abnormal world, like the worst psychic phenomenon than the worst world war in history. Japan is the birthplace of a mysterious psychic phenomenon that ignores the physical laws in this world. I am very sorry. On the face of it, there are no infected people as office workers. Occasionally, multiple close contacts are reported when a health center, such as a hospital, government office, or school, determines that an examination is necessary. Rather than the Japanese people being crazy, it really feels like everyone knows nothing. So, this statistic has no meaning. This phenomenon is seen all over the world. Perhaps most in the United States know nothing. So I decided to teach humanity what is happening and what is needed.
Very, very rarely ill, and I had, as many people who've got corona are listening, I had terrible sore throat, dry cough, and a very high temperature. So it was whilst we were still testing, so I got tested for it, and it's corona, and I'm gladly coming out the other end of it. So really, it's a very, very, very bad flu-like illness. That's all I can describe it as. I've had the flu. It's worse than the flu, but I knew that my body, I'm 60, I'm not young, but I haven't got any underlying health conditions. I'm not sick, so I knew I would survive it. There wasn't any doubt about it, but it was just a grim illness. Now, if this happened at any other time, I think I would have called my GP. I'd have had my GP maybe once or twice. I might have even been given antibiotics, even though they don't work. So, but I knew what it was, so I just sat it out with paracetamol. Or slept it out, actually, because that's all I've done. I mean, there's absolutely nothing else you can do.
If anyone is thinking of taking any chances, just take a look at me. I'm in the intensive care unit. I can't breathe without this. They've had to sew that into my artery. I've got a cannula, another cannula, and a catheter. I'm actually 10 times better right now than what I was before. I don't even know. I've lost count of the days. If anyone still smokes, put the cigarettes down, because I'm telling you now, you need your fucking lungs. And please, none of you take any chances. I mean it. Because if it gets really bad, then you're going to end up here. Okay? Thank you for all your lovely messages. I really appreciate it. And my body is fighting this. I've not seen Richard, I've not seen the girls since Friday. And I'm just going to fight this. So once again, don't take any chances.
Unpleasant experience, and I went downhill on Thursday last week, and for a couple of nights it was very hard to sleep. Incredibly painful throat. It was like having glass in my throat. I couldn't eat or drink anything for a couple of days, and I had a bit of a cough, but not really a big cough. And when you're on the way down, it's really worrying, because we can all see just how serious this illness is. And for some people, the people who often get into the worst of health, and those who lose their lives, it's often because the lungs overreact to the virus. There's an immune response. And you just don't know if that's going to happen. So I found it really worrying. And then, thankfully, I bottomed out and started getting better. And for me, it was short-lived, and I was able to come back to work yesterday, and I'm in full health. But it is worrying. I've lost half a stone. It's quite a serious impact directly. Well, but thankfully for me, I could get through it, and I managed to keep working through it. But it's obviously much harder when you're both working from home but also not very well.
It's been kind of this never-ending battle. Sometimes you just need that validation, even if you don't have the answers.
My heart rate was out of control. My blood pressure was high. It was very terrifying.
I just knew in my heart that was it, and sure enough, that's what it was.
That's what it was.
It was a blood clot in my lungs, correct.
Brendan, do you think it could have saved your life?
If I had gone another couple of weeks without getting the right treatment, I don't know what would have happened, and I don't want to find out.
It's an overwhelming feeling to know that I changed somebody.
We've developed.
If you're not feeling good, you're exhausted, you have a little pressure in your chest or your head is, isolate yourself. And then get help when it's time. You can't breathe, that's a bad feeling. And then I think the other fear that I have is long-term lung damage, because they don't really know. But I have faith in God. But I do have some struggling breathing. But I'm sure God will continue to heal me, and that's just going to go away soon. It would be, or even to your children or your spouse or anything. There are people out there who it's real, and it's very scary.
Rather, it is completely unknown why some of the characteristic pathological symptoms of coronavirus infection occur. There are reports showing an association with multiple organ inflammatory syndrome. The initial symptom is sore throat. After that, a strong inflammatory reaction of the airways and lungs occurs in the school lunch. And the suffocation and strong bronchial pain seen in pneumonia continue for several months to more than half a year, and there is no fever. After that, an inflammatory reaction is seen in a wide area from the bronchi to the airways and lungs, but at the same time, an inflammatory reaction also occurs in the esophagus and stomach. An inflammatory reaction is also seen in the oral cavity. In some cases, the tongue feels numb and painful, red and swollen. Chilblains, such as Kawasaki disease, may occur. If this is not the case, that is, if you have a fever and have pneumonia, suffocation, cough, or sore throat, you should recover spontaneously within a few days to a week with the cold symptoms characteristic of coronavirus. seems to be, so coronawil is not a source of persistent infections. Over the past year, anomalous statistical data have been generated around the world due to the involvement of unknown infectious agents such as prions that humanity does not yet understand. One of the reasons is that the histopathological findings of the lungs of the corpse show that there are no lesions seen in the symptoms of pneumonia, but rather that the entire lung is transformed into another object. It is found not only in the lungs but also in multiple organs such as the heart, brain and blood vessels. Either way, after infection with an infectious factor, there is no way to detect it. No cure, no cure. This is the biggest issue of human life in society. It has not been disclosed whether all patients with pathological symptoms have a positive test for coronawil. With almost no human interaction across the planet Earth, the spread of infectious diseases at the same time occurs when there are no possible transmission routes in the world. Think of it as an abnormal situation. It feels like you are being invaded or attacked by something rather than a pathogen infection. The strange thing about coronavirus is that all people who test positive for PCR genetics are healthy. To put it simply, coronavirus is not a pathogen. However, looking at the clinical data of corpses so far, structural mutations in many organs in the body can be seen. For example, according to the results of an Italian study, a sample of a corpse more than 2 years ago showed a positive reaction for the new coronavirus. Perhaps it is either a virus that has been assimilated into humans for a long time, or there is a problem with the testing method. Looking at the age of onset of infectious diseases on the Earth, it was limited to the elderly at the time of discovery half a year ago, but after that, cases of onset in the 20s and 30s are rapidly becoming conspicuous in half a year. It is unclear why there are characteristic changes in the age distribution, but if human newborns and children become lethal within a few years, it will be impossible to have offspring. And over the next few hundred years, we'll be wiped out. Since I have an infectious disease, I think it is a fact that there is no doubt that some infectious disease is occurring. It is saliva infection rather than air that plays an important role in the transmission route. Symptoms begin with the symptoms of a cold in the airway mucosa and lungs, after which the inflammatory response worsens rapidly. There is a strong inflammatory response in almost the entire respiratory tract, esophagus, lungs and stomach. In the case of humans, although there are individual differences depending on the person, symptoms such as stomatitis and a mysterious inflammatory reaction called Kawasaki disease also occur. Perhaps there is considerable damage to blood vessels, the brain, and other organs. Long-term observation is needed to see if this is related to the incidence of cancer and the development of symptoms such as arteriosclerosis and ruptured aneurysms. But I think there will be some announcements in the coming years. Humans say they need to develop a coronavirus vaccine, but it doesn't make sense to give the vaccine to people who are already infected. Vaccines centered on the United States, the United Kingdom and Europe are genetic vaccines that will help humanity survive and will be urgently administered at the planetary level early this year or early next year as a US-led last resort. Since high molecular weight my cells stored at a considerably low temperature are used, it seems that they devised to produce antibodies by locally presenting antigens to cells by subcutaneous administration. Details are classified at the government level and no one knows. In other words, sexual intercourse by the opposite sex will surely cause a mysterious infection. In other words, from now on, human beings think that it is the beginning of a world that has no affection for others, and that it is the birth of sexual world. I think that the strong stimulating pain in the throat makes it impossible for humans to speak or laugh. After that, his condition deteriorated rapidly and he died of multiple organ failure and pneumonia, but the pathogenic mechanism of the disease is unknown and the reason is unknown. In the future, human beings will have a hard time living because pain and inflammation due to a long-term strong inflammatory reaction will occur all over the body soon after birth. So, considering whether it is right to have children in such a world, I think that human beings will disappear from this world at an earlier stage, probably in about 100 years if we do not have children. I personally don't believe in God or Buddha, and I don't think alien attacks are realistic. However, looking at the current situation in which mysterious phenomena such as psychic phenomena occur frequently in Japan, it is not clear what controls the timing. One thing I can say is that there is something in this world that completely ignores the physical laws of the universe. Perhaps many living humans haven't announced it now, but it's well known that the same psychic sensations began around 1990 in countries around the world. As evidence, the Japanese economy has been in a state of continuous catastrophic recession since 1990. After the war, it became a defeated country due to the landing operation of the United States. And even now there are multiple U.S. military bases, and Japan is under the supervision of the United States and is almost a colony. English has become an essential part of compulsory education. And for some reason it has become a tourist destination for Chinese people. But recently, Chinese people have stopped entering the country, and due to a mysterious infectious disease, Chinese people will not be able to enter the country for tourism purposes. Absent, therefore, the word that the Japanese government is now calling to the people is the English word go to travel. Most politicians have an intellectual level below kindergarten. In the United States, President Trump's administration is causing problems and the people are rioting. But this phenomenon is seen all over the world. In other words, PCR tests have made many people out of poverty even more serious. Therefore, we will introduce the gene sequence of the PCR test. This is a protocol created by the National Institute of Infectious Diseases of Japan, and if it is a global standard, it is at a level that needs to be reviewed urgently. Coronaviruses can be broadly divided into 7 types at the genetic level, but in reality, it is thought that there are quite a large number of mutants. No one knows what it has to do with illness. The company that develops and manufactures the test kit clearly states in the product that it will not compensate for mutations or deletions in the target of the gene. And what is actually being tested? I don't know. Whether it is positive or negative is a nearly stochastic question. In other words, it doesn't make sense. Coronavirus consists of 30,000 base sequences. Among them, 10 bases, including spike protein, are selected in 2 places, but there seems to be no reason. If anyone understands English, you need to find out what your country is inspecting. And I think we should contact the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency to urgently review the test method and tell us that we need to find out what the real pathogen is. It is a mysterious phenomenon that the positive reaction of coronavirus occurs in the same season and timing when the border is closed and the movement of human beings across countries is restricted. We believe that the coronavirus is originally assimilated into human cells. In other words, they are exposed to various viruses when they are living in the global environment after birth. It is known that there are several infectious factors, such as herpes viruses, that are assimilated and latent in genes such as retroviruses, and that are latent in cells such as the nervous system. It is undeniable that weakened immunity is associated with various pathological aggravations. It is not known that the growth of the coronavirus is not associated with a reduced immune response. But what triggers the switch from latent to growth of the virus?